At one point during this hearing, Sam Altman even said, quote, "My worst fear is we cause significant harm to the world," when he's talking about what can go wrong here. And lawmakers and the AI experts at the hearing cited several different AI safety risks that they're kind of losing sleep over. So there were a handful of kind of common issues that everyone seemed to be concerned about. And I'm going to list out a few of the main ones and then get your take on these because they're all important issues in their own right. The first is AI's ability to produce misinformation generally, but also specifically during election season. So being able to create fake text, images, video, and audio at scale is a huge concern, as well as the ability to emotionally manipulate people consuming this content. And so there's fears that this could influence the outcome of elections in a negative way, including we have upcoming in the US a 2024 presidential election. Now, another huge concern is job disruption, or the possibility that AI will cause significant and rapid unemployment. Also discussed were concerns around copyright and licensing, the fear that AI models are being trained on material that is legally owned by other parties and being often used without their consent. We also are worried generally about harmful or dangerous content. So it's not just misinformation, but also generative AI systems producing outputs that actually harm human users. So a couple ways this could happen include hallucination, where it makes up information and misleads you, or a lack of what we would call alignment, where generative AI is not well trained enough and gives users information that they can use that harm others or themselves. So AI that is not aligned with the most beneficial interests of humanity first. Now, underlying all of this is this big overall fear of the pace and scale of AI innovation and our ability to control that. So the experts and lawmakers in the hearing do fear, it seems, that without proper guardrails, AI development could move so fast that we release potentially harmful technology into the world that can't be adequately controlled, or, in some of the more extreme opinions out there, we might actually create machines far smarter than us that we don't control. So that's kind of what's often broadly called artificial general intelligence, or AGI. So Paul, if I'm looking into this hearing and hearing all of the conversation around AI risks and just getting up to speed, honestly, I think I'd be having a bit of a panic attack.
I might be having a panic attack.
Everything I just listed seem like very significant concerns. Now, could you kind of put these in context for us? Like, which ones are the most actual clear and present dangers, and which ones are more hypothetical things that are concerning, but not as immediately impactful right now?
As I've said on recent episodes, this whole like AI is going to destroy humanity. I mean, I get it. I understand that makes for great headlines in the media, and it drives a lot of clicks and views, and I know why the mainstream media would run with these kind of like more abstract, long-termist kind of approaches, and it makes sense. To me, it's kind of like saying like an asteroid could hit Earth and destroy humanity, and it might happen in 100 million years or 10 million years or a million years. Like, yes, okay, that's good. Like, I'm glad there are scientists at the frontiers solving for asteroids coming. But the reality is, on Earth, we got real problems today. Like, we have climate change, we have hunger, we have disease, we have contagions. Like, we have things that I really want scientists working on. And that's kind of how I feel about what is going on here. Is like, yes, okay, I'm glad that Jeff Hinton is talking about existential threats to humanity, and like some people are thinking about these long-termist views.
Mm-hmm.
But I would really much rather know that the majority of scientists and the majority of lawmakers are focusing on the things that you just outlined. These are very real. And so I would think about these on a timeline, almost like an XY axis of like the time that they will impact us, when it will occur, and the significance of the impact. And so when I look at that, the election interference is right at the forefront. I mean, that is at our doorstep. It's already happening, and it's going to get really bad. And that's going to occur over the next, what do we got? 14, 15, 16 months or whatever before the November election in the US. So it's going to be, kicking into high gear. So that's real. I think job loss is real in the next 6 to 12 months. I think we're going to start seeing that impact. We had a whole episode dedicated to that. Um, Disruption to the education system. I think administrators, teachers, professors, we're going to have this summer to kind of like regroup and figure out what does this mean going into the next school year, because it's happening. I'm hearing like one-offs from friends whose kids are using it or hearing about it. You're hearing stories about entire classes being failed because the teacher thinks they used AI to do it. So it's like this is happening, and now we got to regroup over the summer and figure out how to go into the school year next year, the 23-24 school year, and solve for this. We just saw some great efforts just in Wired Magazine on Friday, I think it was. I read the New York City school systems sort of pulled back on their ban of ChatGPT. And then the city of Boston came out with this incredible, guidance on generative AI, encouraging agencies and schools to like try this stuff.
Mm.
So I think that's really important. Bias and discrimination has been there for years, like, in terms of like lending, job applications. So that's happening. It's just happening below, kind of the radar for a lot of people. And then the thing I think is going to be just a massive issue moving forward is this deceptive and synthetic content. I shared this past weekend on LinkedIn a TED talk with the guy from Metaphysics, I think it is. Is that the name of the company? We profiled them, the Tom Cruise
Yep.
deepfake
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
And it was a very disturbing talk, honestly. Like,
Mm.
crazy technology, but yeah, I mean, how good that tech is getting, how fast,
Mhm.
I really worry about it. So I think the ones you outlined are very real. They're all relatively near term, and there's no advancements in the technology needed for all of those things to happen. So again, we're talking about today's technology creating these issues. If we jump ahead a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, and the technology is basically doubling in its capabilities every year, it becomes a really overwhelming thing to think about, which is why it's so important that whether the government does anything immediately or not, at least they're talking about these things and they're focusing on these issues that I consider the very real near term issues.
So, in the next topic, we're going to discuss some more of the regulatory considerations around that are being suggested for AI. But I'm curious, with all the issues we just outlined, like, are companies, AI companies today, doing anything to address these issues? Like, is that part of the reason for this hearing?
We've covered these a little bit on the show before, but certainly the tech companies are aware of these dangers and they've had ethical AI teams. Unfortunately, as we've discussed, those ethical AI teams probably aren't playing as much of a role right now, given the
Mm.
competitive nature of what's going on and the rate of innovation that's occurring. The ethical concerns seem to be becoming secondary within some of these tech companies. But we know that GPT-4 when it came out was, I think Sam said, about 6.5 months old, 7 months old, meaning they spent 7 months on safety, alignment, red teaming, trying to find the flaws within it, trying to find the harm it could do. They have ethics teams. There's Google avoiding releasing in the EU because they don't adhere to some of the EU laws, or they're trying to prevent some new EU laws from going into place.
Mm.
So certainly these organizations are doing things. And again, you want to assume they have the best interest of society in mind, but you can't always believe that because competition and capitalism. Like they're not incentivized to prevent this technology from getting into the world. They're basically encouraged to do it, and they're rewarded to do it from a stock price standpoint. So, OpenAI obviously not stock publicly traded, but from a financial perspective. So I just don't know that we can rely on the tech companies. I don't think it's enough to assume and to trust these 5 to 10 major tech companies in the world who are basically driving AI innovation right now to police themselves. I don't think that's realistic.
Mm. So I am curious if you had to pick one of these issues or fears to be most concerned about in the near future, which would it be and kind of why would you pick that one? Like how does your choice affect, business leaders and professionals?
I would initially say job loss because it's the one I've thought most deeply about, and have the most conviction around, like, my view of what I think is gonna happen. But then I would now that I'm looking at these things and thinking out loud, like, election interference is like a threat to democracy. Like,
Hmm.
what I really, really worry about it. And this is kind of the catch-22 for politicians is they wanna use this technology to win elections, but they wanna also control it to some degree. But interestingly enough, I think it was last week, OpenAI actually has in their terms you cannot use this stuff for, certain elements of political campaigns and things,
Oh, hmm.
and I think they actually, caught somebody doing it and, like, shut them down from using the technology for that.
Hmm.
It was one of, like, the big, either agencies or PACs that works for one of the politicians or something was using it, and they shut it down. So, yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting, but I do worry greatly about the elections.
Yeah.